Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Nick and I'm here to help you master building applications in Laravel. Today we're going to talk about creating custom responses in your application to help standardize responses and some of the reasons why we might do this. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so what we've got here is just a sample Laravel project, and what I've done here is I've installed Tailwind CSS with Vite. Just so that we can just easier kind of visualize what's going on here. So all I've done is created 3 buttons, one for CSV, one for PDF, and one for showing API errors. So let's take a look at what the code looks like. Here's the welcome page. Again, just the 3 buttons, nothing serious going on here. I've created the routes already, and let's take a look at the routes. Nothing special again. I've created a controller that's housed these routes, and there's nothing in this controller. Let's take a look at this controller so we can see that we're starting from scratch. So if we wanted to download a CSV, we might do something like return response, and then we can do download. Laravel has a special download function on the response, and what we can do is we can give it the path of a file. I put the path of a sample CSV file already on here, so it's called sample CSV. And then we have the option of giving it a name. So I'm going to say sample.csv. And so if we go ahead and we refresh this page and we click this button, we're going to see that it just downloaded the sample CSV, which is great. This is what we'd expect, and Laravel makes this easy for us. If we wanted to do this manually, what we could do is something like return response, and then we can put in the path or the string to the content, and so we'd have to load the file, and then we could give it a 200 because that's the status would be like okay that the file was loaded properly, and then we could give it some headers where we have to define the content type and whether or not we want to do inline or attachment. But Laravel kind of handles this for us very nicely with this response download function. So this is nice and good and all, but I think we could take this one step further, especially if we've got an application that might kind of do a bunch of exporting, or you need to do a bunch of exporting. You know, there's a little bit left to be desired if you're looking to standardize kind of what is going on with your CSVs. So what we can do is we can create a custom response for this. In order to do a custom response, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to create a class. So let's go ahead and create the class. I'm going to create the class in app HTTP, and I'm going to create a new folder called responses. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a class called CSV download. Let's make this specific for downloading. Now there's other options where if you wanted to just show up on the screen without downloading, we could do maybe inline, but we're going to stick with download right now. So in this download, in order to just make it as easy as possible and for Laravel to understand that this is a response, we can do implements responsible. And this will tell Laravel, again, how to return whatever it is that you're going to return as a response. So they defined this contract for us, and we're going to use this contract to let Laravel know this is how we can do it. So I just auto-filled in with the property or the methods that need to be set in order to satisfy the contract or the interface. So this is basically a way to tell Laravel, this is what this class means as a response. So if we go back to our controller, what we can actually do is we can actually just take this whole thing, copy it, and paste it in here. We can come back here and we can return new CSV download, and it'll work the same. The real big benefit here is that nobody has to remember to call the download function. Nobody has to remember kind of what to do here. It's just automatically handled in the background. So let's take a look at the UI to make sure that's still downloading. I've refreshed the page. I'm going to click download. And it didn't work. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at why this isn't working. Let's take a look at the CSV download, and it's because we did not return. The return is important here. Let's come back here, and if we click download, it should now download something. Okay, we've got the download. That's great. That's what we'd expect. But you might be wondering, how can we customize this? The path is already defined here. It's hard-coded, and so is the name. Well, just like any other class, we can define a constructor. And in here, we can say we want the file path and we want the file name. So what we can do now is we can take this out and go this file path and this file name. Now you might be wondering, how can we call this file path if we're not setting any class variables here? And that's because new in PHP 8.1, we can actually just declare what the level of visibility is inside the constructor. So that's what this is. So we no longer have to do creating a variable up in the class and then setting it here. This takes care of it in one swoop. So we can just minimize this class here. So now we got to go back to our controller and we have to give it the file path and the name. So I'm going to paste in the path that it was before, and then I'm going to give it a sample.csv, which is what it was before as well. So now this is an easy way for our team to define any kind of download, any kind of response, anything that needs to be done. There's one way to do this. So we don't have, if you've got a team of developers, you don't got somebody doing it one way and another person doing it another way. All they got to do is just use this CSV download now. So let's go ahead and make sure that this still works after we've refactored it for the constructor. Refresh, click download, and it downloads again. So we are all good there. Let's see what it looks like for a PDF. All right, so perhaps for a PDF, we might want to show this in line, or we might want to force the download. So let's try and do this as a download first and then perhaps inline. So again, if we were just going to do this regular, we might go response, download, and then the storage path, and then the sample PDF, and then sample.pdf. Now this is going to instruct Laravel to download this PDF that we've got stored here. Refresh the page, click download, and it is downloading. If we take a look at this download, we can see that we've got our sample PDF here. All right, let's go ahead and create a download for PDFs. So again, I'm going to create a new class. We're going to name this PDF download. And we're going to implement the responsible. And I'm going to go ahead and add the method stubs. And so we're going to take this and paste it into here. And we're going to do something similar where we've got the constructor, we've got a private file path, we've got a file name, and then let's put the name here. So again, this should work after we new PDF download. Do this and sample.pdf. So this should work the same way as the CSV. So let's double check that this is still working. Okay, and it looks like it just downloaded the PDF again, so that's great. Now let's see what it might look like if we were to create a class for inlining the PDF. And inlining the PDF just means that it opens up in the browser instead of automatically downloading it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new one. New PDF inline. And we're going to make this implement responsible. Add the method stubs. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to grab actually everything over here because most of the things are the same. But instead this time, we're going to do file. And this is going to instruct Laravel that we want to just show the file instead of download it. We just need just the one file path. So now when I click it, it inlines the PDF. So that's great. That's easy. So again, the important part here is that somebody doesn't have to remember how to do this. They just need to remember the class to use. And then the rest is taken care of for them. Now, another important response that you might want to create is, let's say you're building an API. You might want to standardize how you report errors back to the user or the person that's consuming the API. So that way, you know, let's say you've got 15 endpoints and you've got 10 developers. You've established one way to respond with errors, and then everybody can use that. And then the person consuming that knows what to expect, and it's standardized for them as well. So let's take a look at what it maybe perhaps looks like if we want to return some errors in JSON. So let's just say we want to do like response JSON, and then let's just create an array of like errors, and then we might have multiple errors. These errors might have keys. So let's say, first name, and then first name is required. And then let's say that we have another one, and then that's last name is required. Let's see what this looks like in Chrome. We can see that we've got JSON errors, first name, and then last name. What we might want to do here is we might want to standardize what this looks like. So again, let's come to our responses. Let's create an API error class. We always need to implement the responsible and implement the required methods. So here's where we can do our return response JSON again. We're going to need to pass in our errors. So we already know we're going to need a constructor. And we're going to force this to somebody who's passing in errors. Let's assume we can have one or many errors. So it's going to be private array errors. And then what we can do is errors equals this errors. So now that we've established this, we can go back to our controller. We're going to take this array. We're going to do return new API error. And in here, it's going to require an array of errors. And just like that, we've defined another standard on how we can return errors. If we refresh, we should see the same, and we do. So let's go back to our little dashboard here. If I click on Show API Errors, we get the same exact responses we did before. Perhaps you might want to take it to another level. I think this is out of the scope for this video, but perhaps you might want each of these to be an error in and of itself. So maybe we want to create a class that handles each individual error, almost like a DTO object or something to hold the data, because maybe we have more data in here, or whatever the case is. Maybe we are returning other information in addition to that for each error. But this is a good way to get started on, defining standards that can be used for your application. This will help with reducing the amount of code that's duplicated. Now, that's not always a good thing, but in this case, I think it's warranted because, especially for APIs, if the APIs are being consumed by external people or even internal, these people are expecting that the API is going to return in a certain way, and if it's not returned in that certain way, it could really lead to some problems down the road. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this video was helpful for you, please drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment below, and I'm happy to continue making more videos.